How's it going, guys, and welcome back to BL3's Forgotten. This is where I take a look at unused and not often talked about pieces of gear to determine whether or not they deserve to be remembered within the modern meta of the game or should be left behind and forgotten. And today we are taking a look at the Jericho. If you'd like to farm the Jericho for yourself, you're going to want to fast travel over to the Cathedral of the Twin Gods and follow along until you find the save station in this hallway full of saw blades, which is where we will be resetting from. Continue on forward past Rachel the Anointed and down into the hole before turning around and making your way into this little back area where Crushjaw will spawn. Kill him and you can get yourself the Jericho. The Jericho is a legendary Vladof launcher, only able to roll in radiation damage and always having the mortar as an underbarrel. The Jericho can also roll with 1 or 2 projectiles per shot, costing 2 or 3 ammo per shot respectively. When fired, the Jericho will launch out a rocket which will slowly rise up into the air, exploding at its peak and dropping down 3 grenades to the ground. These grenades will then explode shortly after impact. The mortar mode, of course, functions the same as any other mortar, providing a location marked on the ground where all of your rockets will land, but when fired it will shoot out all of the rockets within the magazine in an arcing trajectory towards that ground location, which will then explode on impact and launch a rocket up into the air, functioning the same way as the primary firing mode. The Jericho has received a single buff, being a 40% weapon damage increase. Wow. Wow, I was wrong about this thing. For the longest time, I have hated the Jericho. I thought it was fucking obnoxious to use, and I just never felt like it ever had the damage to actually do much of anything. But no, over the course of recording for this video, the Jericho has done a complete 180 for me, and is now possibly one of my favorite and most enjoyable launchers to use. The Jericho just fucking carpet bombs. That's the entire thing. You shoot it, it'll go up into the air, it drops down, and it just fucking nukes. And it does have its problems, and I will talk about those in a moment, but it is just fun and so fucking cool to watch when it works. Before that, though, let's talk about ×1 versus ×2, and really there isn't too much to talk about here. I personally preferred ×1 far more over ×2, but I do think that ×2 definitely has a place, especially because the Jericho is, of course, very good with more projectiles, as the mini grenades that spawn from it are unlisted and therefore will be duplicated. So if you're running a build without access to bonus projectiles, then maybe you might want a ×2, but if you're using an Infernal Wish, plain dirty, two-fang, whatever, then I would just recommend the ×1 as you would get more damage out of it. So, damage-wise, the Jericho's actually pretty solid, and that was one of the biggest surprises to me. I had it in my head that the damage just wasn't good, but that isn't at all the case. The problem that the Jericho has isn't the damage itself, it's actually dealing the damage. As while this Tarpet Bomb playstyle is very fun, it's very difficult to actually land reliably on a lot of enemies because a lot of enemies in BL3 move around a fucking hell of a lot, and a lot of the ones that move fastest also have the smallest hitboxes. And because of how long it takes for the projectile to rise into the air, explode, rain down the mini grenades, and then for those to also then explode, enemies are just given a massive opportunity to simply exit the blast zone. I think Moze was able to remedy this the most just because of Torg Cross Promotion being able to boost the shit out of the blast radius, along with just having many projectiles and many chances at short fuse because of that, so it felt much harder for enemies to actually escape the radius just because of how large the radius became. Ties That Bind is also a very good option at just holding enemies in place so that you can actually land your projectiles. Though speaking of Amara, do not use Heavy Rain with this. Holy shit, I found that out the hardest way possible. This is perhaps the worst projectile speed has ever done for a weapon because it increases the speed of every single projectile of the Jericho. This means it'll fly further up into the air while also being further out from your location. The grenades will fall down faster, making their placement completely different and far more tighter together, and Heavy Rain just makes this thing feel unusable. It also meant that you had to break your neck downwards to even hit anything somewhat close to you with the mortar. Though the mortar is definitely where I think the Jericho shines the most. The problem is it takes 2 ammo per shot and it'll just empty your mag, so the mortar does run through ammo so much quicker, but it lets you far more reliably land more of your projectiles while also just dealing a shit ton of damage in a very large area. But the biggest thing to keep in mind with the Jericho is that it is definitely a weapon that needs to be built for. On builds not centered around rocket launchers or just splash damage in general, it is pretty whatever. The downsides of it are just exacerbated and very obvious, while the upsides just aren't as exaggerated and you can't really feel much of a benefit of using this over anything else. The mortar still worked okay just because because of how much damage it can spam out in a short amount of time, but the main mode was definitely lacking. But when you do throw it onto that proper build for it, it does just genuinely shine, with both those fire modes being completely viable and having their uses, making it incredibly fun and having the variability to swap your mode on the fly to fit whatever situation you might run into. The Jericho is both a good and incredibly fun weapon while being shit and frustrating. It's so wildly inconsistent, but so fucking fun when it works, while having the potential to be a legitimately strong option. I mean, just look at this clip. It fucking nuked Kraken and then carpet bombed every enemy within the vicinity, but then sometimes you'd be better off giving an enemy a really cute and gentle kiss than trying to shoot it with the Jericho. The mortar definitely helps with the inconsistent feeling, however, it isn't always the best choice and sometimes just wastes more ammo than it's worth. Against enemies that are going to be more stationary or just smaller groups, the main mode is better, but when you need to just rain down nuclear hellfire on a large group of peaceful Molly-1 troopers, then the mortar is definitely the way to go. But the biggest problem facing the Jericho is just how long it takes for the actual main effective part of this weapon to occur. It has to slowly rise into the air, then explode, then rain down the grenades, then those need time to detonate. It is definitely a test of patience, but dear God, I fucking love and hate this gun. But that's gonna about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. Down in the description will be a link to my Twitch channel where you can follow to be notified of when I go live, and just below that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.